When Netflix released its new thriller series Two Graves, originally titled Dos Tumbas, it immediately grabbed attention for its unusual story and its powerful lead character. The show follows Isabel, an elderly grandmother who refuses to give up on her granddaughter's disappearance. 2 years have gone by since Veronica Marin vanished, and the official police investigation hasn't satisfied Isabel. She feels let down by the authorities, ignored by society, and powerless in the face of tragedy. But when a new clue appears, Isabel decides that waiting around is no longer an option. She takes matters into her own hands, diving into a personal quest that soon becomes darker and more dangerous than she ever imagined. The series quickly made audiences wonder, could this be inspired by a real story? After all, the emotions feel very real, and Isabel's desperation reflects the way many grieving families react in the real world. But the truth is that Two Graves is not based on any one true story. It is a fictional creation written by Spanish author and screenwriter Agustín Martínez, along with his longtime collaborators George Diaz and Antonio Mercero. Even though the series is not a direct retelling of real events, the writers admit they drew loose inspiration from real life cases and tragedies that shook Spain. Agustín Martínez explained that the main spark for the series came from the character of Isabel herself. He wanted to create a murder mystery with a completely different type of protagonist, someone who doesn't fit the usual mold. Most thrillers feature detectives, parents, siblings, or young adults chasing justice. But a grandmother, that is rare both in fiction and in the real world. Martínez felt that grandmothers are often underestimated, overlooked, and considered too fragile to lead such stories. That's exactly why he chose to place Isabel at the center. She represents strength in unexpected places, but also shows how far grief and love can push a person. While building Isabel's story, the writers looked at several real-life tragedies that had left deep marks on Spain's history. For instance, they studied the infamous Alcácer girls case from 1992, where 3 teenage girls disappeared and were later found murdered. Another case that influenced their thinking was the disappearance of Marta del Castillo in 2009, which shocked the nation. These real cases reflected how families suffer for years when they do not receive closure, and how the justice system sometimes fails to provide answers. However, the writers have been clear that Two Graves is not a dramatization of those cases. Instead, those tragedies served only as emotional references, helping them imagine what a grieving grandmother might feel and how she might act. One of the key reasons the writers made Isabel the heart of the story was to shift the spotlight onto the families left behind after such crimes. In most crime dramas, the focus is on detectives, journalists, or even the criminals. The suffering of families is shown briefly, but rarely explored in depth. Martínez, Diaz, and Mercero wanted to remind audiences that when someone goes missing or is murdered, it is not just the victim who suffers. The trauma continues for parents, siblings, grandparents, and friends who are left without answers. By following Isabel's journey, viewers can experience firsthand what it means to live with grief and uncertainty, and why the hunger for justice can transform into something darker. Interestingly, the writers never planned for Two Graves to remain a simple mystery. As they developed the script, they realized Isabel's story was moving towards something more sinister, a revenge thriller. What starts as a grandmother's search for the truth slowly evolves into a much darker tale about obsession, vengeance, and moral compromise. Isabel begins as a sympathetic woman, but her choices challenge viewers to ask themselves, see, how far would you go for justice if you lost someone you loved? Would you risk your life, your morality, and even your soul to get answers? This shift from a mystery into a revenge drama is what gives Two Graves its unique power. The show also carefully balances tone. The writers wanted viewers to feel Isabel's love and heartbreak, but they also needed to show the darker side of her decisions. If they leaned too much into sentimentality, the series would lose its sharp edge. If they leaned too much into violence and vengeance, it might stop feeling human. To strike this balance, they used the setting as a tool. Two Graves is set in Andalusia, a southern Spanish region known for its sunlight, warmth, and beauty. Against this bright backdrop, the darkness of Isabel's choices feels even more unsettling. The contrast highlights how grief and vengeance can twist even the most ordinary, beautiful places into shadows of despair. Another creative decision was to keep the story short. Instead of stretching it into a long season, the writers limited Two Graves to just 3 episodes. This allowed the series to maintain a fast pace, without unnecessary subplots that could weaken Isabel's story. Each episode is packed with intensity, making the audience feel the urgency of Isabel's mission. In fact, this short format makes the series feel almost like a long movie, where every scene matters. The writers wanted viewers to stay glued to Isabel's journey without losing momentum. At its core, Two Graves is not about whether Isabel succeeds or fails. It is about the choices she makes and the psychological transformation she undergoes. Viewers may sympathize with her grief, but they may also question her actions. The show asks an uncomfortable but powerful question: when tragedy strikes, do we accept the limits of the law, or do we take justice into our own hands? And if we choose revenge, do we lose a part of ourselves in the process? This moral complexity is what makes audiences think the story might be based on true events. It feels authentic because it reflects real human emotions: anger, despair, helplessness, and the desperate need for closure. But the truth remains: Isabel is fictional. She does not exist in real life, and her story is not based on a single case. Instead, she represents the pain and rage of countless families around the world who live with unanswered questions. The title of the show itself, Two Graves, also carries a deeper meaning. It comes from the old saying, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. It warns that vengeance consumes not just the target, but also the seeker. This phrase perfectly captures Isabel's journey. Her pursuit of truth may destroy not only her enemies, but also herself. So, to answer the question clearly, Two Graves is not based on a true story. It is a fictional thriller, but one that uses real emotions and references real tragedies to create a story that feels painfully authentic. The show's strength lies in how it blends fiction with realism, making audiences wonder what they would do if placed in Isabel's shoes. By choosing a grandmother as the unlikely hero, Agustin Martinez and his team challenge stereotypes about age, grief, and strength. They remind us that pain does not discriminate. Anyone, no matter how old or fragile they seem, can be pushed to the edge by love and loss. That is the haunting truth behind Two Graves, and that is why the series leaves such a lasting impact on viewers.